Dr. Christine, thank you so much for being here again. We did an episode on perimenopause. I think it was sometime last year. We had an amazing response, so I thought I'd get you back in here today and dive a little bit deeper into the confusing world for most people of perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Not a drama. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who haven't met me, my name's Dr Christine Greenwood. I am a specialist in menopause, perimenopause. I do a little bit of weight loss as well. And I work at, I'm soon to work at John Flynn Hospital after baby comes.
And when does baby come?
Baby comes in a week. So if I go into labour here, Mitchell's, you're it.
I must admit, and I'm not even joking, I ran through this scenario of us sitting at the table having a chat, your water breaking, and then I thought, what is
a distinct possibility.
what are the steps?
I know.
I'd like to think that I would be really like...
Well, if it's quick, you would just have to birth the baby.
You reckon?
Yeah, you'd be fine.
What a podcast that would
talk
be.
You through it. We'll keep the mic on.
Would you be able to talk me through that, do you think?
I probably wouldn't, because I am incredibly... I'm either a doctor and I'm in a room and I'm in there, or I'm switched off.
Okay.
So I'd be like, Mitchell, YouTube it.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine.
YouTube this baby delivery and make it happen.
Anyway.
That would be one heck of a reel. I'd do it, I would do it.
You would help me.
Okay, so I do have a few questions that I've written down, and I think these questions for me are just based off experiences that I see our clients go through, experiences that I see my wife go through, and I think there would be really great questions to have a professional like yourself answer. So the first one that I want to know is, why is it that some women, for lack of a better word, seem to breeze through perimenopause and menopause? I do hear a lot of women sort of say, I didn't really experience anything.
Yeah.
And then the other end of the spectrum, you see women who seem to do all the right things, good nutrition, exercise, HRT, and they still seem like they're, battling through every single day.
Yeah. This is such an interesting question, and I guess there's no science behind why some women experience it and why some don't. So, all I can say is it's probably genetics, and there's no direct science. I think that you can say, a lot of people will say, if you keep your body in shape and you eat really well and you're already weight training, it's likely that you'll have symptoms a lot less. And in a way, I don't know that that's true, because I have had people who are incredibly fit who come in and they feel like they're losing their mind and they're different versions of themselves. However, I do think that if you have those habits in place, it is easier to combat it, because, they already have the tools in their belt, and then it's adding a few more. Having said that, I have also to keep in mind as well is I do have some people that absolutely sail through menopause, sail through it, barely even knew they had it. But then by the time they're 55, 60, that's when they start feeling like they're tired, like they're not the person they used to be, their brain isn't as sharp. And so I think that it catches up with people at some point. It's just, it's hard to predict when that's going to be.
So it's not a case of you're going to dodge the bullet, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just when it happens.
I think so, because it's even if you're incredibly symptomatic, and that might also be, there are some links, right? So if someone suffers from PMS, PMDD, which is when you have that premenstrual syndrome or premenstrual dysphoric syndrome, or you've had postnatal depression, that might be an indication that you're going to go through perimenopause symptoms worse. If you're someone whose mum, like I'll have people come in and be like, you need to help me, my mum literally lost her mind. I do not want to treat my kids the way that she was in that time. And so if that's the case, then often it is a genetic thing. So what your mum went through can often predict what it's going to be like for you. Yeah.
Very interesting that you say that, because obviously watching my wife go through perimenopause, and then I also look at my stepdaughter who's 25. Yeah, 25.
Yeah.
She suffers severely from poor sleep,
Yeah.
terrible sleep,
Yeah.
and also migraines. So I look at that scenario and I think, is this almost, looking through the glass ball, is this going to be a telltale sign that you're going to probably struggle? I can't see how it couldn't.
Quite possibly, because what that shows is that you're quite hormonally sensitive.
Yeah.
And often people will be like, have these really crazy symptoms during their period or the week before their period, or after they have a baby. And often they'll feel really, really good in pregnancy. And that's because your hormones are so high in pregnancy. So your estrogen, progesterone is so high. So mood-wise, they're very good. And I think all of that's a predictor that you are hormonally sensitive.
Yeah.
And that it's very possible that you'll have perimenopause symptoms and that they'll be quite severe. Now, also to have to remember, and I know we'll talk about this a bit later, is that even if someone's sailing through, you have to remember that if just because mentally they feel okay, it doesn't mean that physically they are. And it might be things that they aren't experiencing, things that aren't symptomatic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Like their bone density. So I've had people be like, no, I was totally fine. I'm just here because I just want to, just check in that I shouldn't be doing anything, but I feel good. I'll do a bone density and they're osteoporotic, right? And so they weren't symptomatic.
Yeah, it's not something that you necessarily feel. Can you touch on bone density a little bit? Because, since learning from you and then diving further into it, bone density is something that I'm constantly talking to people about because
100%.
I think it's something that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah.
And when I speak to women in their 40s, 50s, 60s who aren't, perhaps ticking off those essentials to look after their bones, I can't help but worry.
100%. And it's something on the forefront of my mind. I think as well, I grew up in an era where the skinnier you were, the better, right? So, I'm older than I look. But I grew up where that was what you were chasing, the real Kate Moss look. And a lot of women who come to me were brought up in that era, right, where it was low-fat everything. You tried to not go to the gym too much to get too bulky. It was all about the cardio. And what happens is that from a certain age, your bones will start to decrease in density, right?
And primarily due to what? Why does that happen?
Well, what happens is that you'll build your bones till the age of, I'm pretty sure it's actually only like 30.
Yeah.
And then there'll be an area of maintaining. And then after your estrogen starts to drop, the bone density will start to decrease, right?
So estrogen is that predominant sex hormone that's promoting the strength of your bones.
Correct. It's like protecting your bones.
Okay.
The minute that starts to decrease and then it starts to plummet in menopause, then your bone density will take an absolute hit. And it is the worst in the first few years of menopause.
Really?
The first 3 to 4 years, you can lose a great percentage of your bone density.
So it's quite aggressive in the first few years.
It's quite aggressive. So number one, if your peak bone density isn't great, like myself, I'm a small woman, I ran my whole life, my peak bone density isn't great. I'm at even more risk than someone else to have that during menopause. So if your peak bone density isn't great, plus you don't do anything about it when you're in perimenopause, menopause, for example, weightlifting, adequate calcium, adequate vitamin D, going on HRT if it's a good thing for you, then your bone density will start to go down, right? Okay. Now, this is even more dangerous in this era. Mitch, I don't know if you've seen, everyone seems to be really, really chasing to be ultra skinny at the moment.
What is it, the whole Debbie Moore thing? Is that what's bringing it? That's quite terrifying. I saw a picture of Debbie Moore, and just not telling anybody what to look like, but I just know this from a health perspective. The picture I saw of Debbie Moore was far from health. That's
it. And I think me and you, we work a lot in weight loss, right? There are very few women who can genetically look like that without severe restriction, right? Yeah. And I don't know what Demi Moore's doing. Maybe she's just naturally very, very thin, and that would be a small percentage of the population. It does happen. It can happen, but it isn't all that common. And the majority of people, to look that way, you have to undergo severe caloric restriction.
Yeah.
And that will, I hate to imagine the health of her bones. And when you are 70 or 80 or even 60, what you care about is living long, living strong, having a good quality of life. Of course, not being obese, of course, not, being at a healthy weight, but you can do all those things while having a healthy bone density.
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately, for many women, the goal of being really, really thin or having a six-pack or getting back your pre-baby body seems to be a more important goal than the things that actually matter.
Yeah.
And I think that if more women understood the importance of bone density,
100%.
you'd more than likely be eating a little bit more food and you'd be lifting some weights.
Yeah. And I feel like if you change your mindset into strong is the new is sexy, strong is incredibly sexy.
Yeah.
And think about what you want your life to look like when you're in your 50s, 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Think about that. Do you want your back to break when you pick up your toddler, your grandkids? Do you want your hips to break? They're all real concerns.
It's legitimate, isn't it?
Actual, yeah. And your recovery rate, if that happens, is very poor, and your quality of life is really poor.
Isn't it true also that you mentioned that your sort of peak bone density is reached at 30, but there can be contributing factors during that time or leading up to that time that can impact your bone density,
100%.
like, eating disorders, is it even breastfeeding, all that sort of stuff?
So the couple of years, while you're breastfeeding, your calcium, or even when you're pregnant, your body can really get the calcium to feed the baby.
Yep.
But yeah, absolutely. So what I find is girls who have been on lots of diets, on and off lots of diets, definitely eating disorders, and not even just eating disorders. So because I think people are like, no, I don't have an eating disorder. But a lot of people have what we call orthorexia, which is like this obsession with being healthy and eating clean, and that was something that it doesn't classify in most people's minds as eating disorders, but even that kind of thing where you cut out dairy and you've cut out a lot of this and that.
Okay, yeah.
That's a calorie restriction, right?
Yeah.
And so all of those things, when you're young, you're not reaching that peak bone density. So all of that puts you at greater risk for when your bone density starts to go down as you get older. It puts you at greater risk because instead of starting up here, you've started down here.
So you want to get your base level of bone density to the best possible position.
Absolutely. If I was young, I'd do it so different.
Yeah.
I would lift weights. I would get strong. I would not be afraid of being bulky.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do a diet a day in my life.
And I mean, what's more fun? Like in all reality, eating some more calories and feeling energized and getting strong, or sacrificing so much for the sake of what? For trying to get a six-pack for the beach, and I've always said this, and people may argue, but nobody really even cares what you look like. Nobody's life is affected by what another individual looks like.
When do you go on holidays and when are you ever when do you ever go out or go on holidays and go, man, do you know what I loved about today? Was that really sexy female next to me who had a six-pack, and she was so good.
Yeah.
It's like you're just with your family.
I know. You're just living life.
Self-consciously, you're just looking at yourself as well.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares, but we put so much pressure on ourselves
100%.
to look a certain way, guys and girls. So, doing things for the right reason is extremely important. The next question that I wanted to ask you was the three most common, and look, the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, I could roll it down the street and we'd have to go around the corner. It goes so long, but are there like three symptoms that are most common for women that you see in your practice?
Yeah. I think number one of the early signs would be mood disturbance. So a lot of people will come in, and these might be people in their early 40s or late 40s, and be like, my PMS, so the week before my period, is so bad that it's to the point that it's starting to affect my relationship. That would be such a common scenario.
In terms of just erratic sort of changes
just
in mood.
irritable, angry, wanting to stab their partner. Like I'll have people say, I could stab my partner and I don't know that I'd feel anything.
Yeah.
You know, this like real,
Deep-
actually deep rage.
Deep
at
primal
the person that
rage.
you love the most, you know, at your safe place.
Do you think that is why, most of the moods come out at home, because it is a safe place?
Yeah.
Out in society, when you're
can't do it at work,
when you're at
right?
work, you've got to
Yeah.
bottle it up. So come home and, maybe your partner, kids are going to get a little bit more of a,
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to do it. You're going to unleash on the people that are going to love you forever.
and you're going to say, and you're going to accept this as well. You're going to take it.
You're going to take it. Or it can be two things, Mitchell. It can be like people have been in hard, bad relationships for a long time and it's been disintegrating over a long space of time. Add a bit of perimenopause, menopause on that. And it's like, you know what? I'm fucking out, right? And then the other scenarios is where they have quite a supportive, loving partner, and he is a very safe place and a rock for them.
Does that happen often, or do you find that when women come in to speak to you about, these symptoms that they, perhaps say, I've got no support at home, workplace, friends, do they feel alone, or what's the percentage there?
I reckon it'd be both. It'd be both. And a lot of people, if they've had a really good, nurturing marriage most of their life, their partner's beautiful and is really supportive. If it's been a relationship that's been tumultuous through their whole life and through their whole marriage, or even the last 5-10 years while their kids have been young and they've raised their kids and it's been quite distant, and then perimenopause, add that on top of that, their partner's not going to all of a sudden be like, oh, yeah, I love this even crazier version of you. This is fantastic. They're
So a
gonna be
recipe
like,
for disaster.
Yeah. So, and I would say more than 50% of people that come see me, their marriage and all their relationship is in a really hard place.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine just yesterday. His partner is going through perimenopause also, and we were just talking about, the dynamic and how things can shift and change. And we both, arrived at the same destination, and we said that when your partner goes through perimenopause, it's truly the time where you do learn or find out, is my partner my best friend or not?
Totally, yeah.
Because I think that if they're not your best friend, and like you said, if there's been years and years of issues,
yeah,
it ain't going to work.
No.
It legitimately isn't going to work. And I do understand that whole divorce statistic and everything, because if your relationship is shaky before you head into it,
100%. It's just the cherry on top.
You're not going to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
That person becomes 100 times more irritating, from both ends, right?
It is, yeah.
And the other thing that's really hard as well is the sex part, right? So most women, I have had a couple of unicorns, like maybe I treat thousands, and I reckon I could probably say on one hand the amount of women who have had increased libido, so are like, oh my goodness, this is like amazing, I'm so much more. But most women experience a much more decreased libido.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like girls are a lot more emotionally entwined in that part of a marriage, whereas guys, it's quite physical, and so that kind of disjointedness, where they're fighting all the time, and then they're not intimate anymore. That's just another recipe for the guy feels like the girl doesn't want him anymore, when really she's just like, actually, it's just really painful and awful.
Yeah,
and I've got so many more things going on in my head.
This isn't where I'm at.
Yeah, and then he interprets that personally, and then over months turn into years. Actually, like years.
I think also for men that a lot of men rely on really small, easy hits of dopamine to sort of get by in life. Not a lot of guys have actually got hobbies. A lot of guys rely on things like drugs, alcohol, sex. They don't like their job. So if you remove one of their hobbies, which might be only related to the bedroom, they're not going to like it, but it's just a fact. But I think for myself, it's really important to understand what your partner's going through in that area.
Totally.
You have to be considerate. You have to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not going to work again.
Yeah.
It's really important.
I know some of my girls are like, I would rather, I'm trying to think of the worst case scenario.
Think of a worst. Go on.
Honestly, I can quote one.
Yeah,
one
go
lady,
on.
One's like, I would rather get lost at sea every day. Literally, I would honestly.
That is so funny.
It is so beyond. I'm like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
It is painful.
Yeah.
It's not pleasurable anymore.
Yeah.
And also, my partner's awful. And
there you go. And if your partner, if your husband is just not being considerate or understanding of what you're going through, and they're just a slob, they're making no efforts, why would you, even with a good libido, you probably don't want to sleep with them?
And that is two different scenarios, because I do have some women who are like, I love my partner and he is gorgeous. Like, I am attracted to him physically, as well as the fact that he's a wonderful man. I feel terrible, but I really don't want to.
Yeah.
And in those cases, it might be there are some things that we can do to help, right? And then there's another scenario where people are like, I don't have any libido. I think it's menopause. Also, my husband's awful and I'm not attracted to him anymore. And then I'm like, and then there's no amount of testosterone I can give you that will fix that.
No, you're not into him in the first place for whatever reason.
You'll just it's not going to help you.
Of course.
But the other case, if your libido is low, you have a genuinely a menopause-related low libido, your vagina is dry, but you love your husband and he is, and you find him attractive and you have a good relationship and he is supportive, absolutely. There is a case for vaginal estrogen. There's a case for vaginal estrogen and testosterone.
Yeah.
And there's a case for testosterone as well.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
That's probably a really good segue into another question I wanted to ask you. Geez, I'm losing my voice. HRT and women through perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
What are, if any, health effects for those who don't go down the road of HRT?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, and I preface this by saying every woman is individual. Every woman has their own risk factors. So please get your own doctor and your own advice. Having said that, if we're speaking generally,
just generally,
most women, most women will benefit from HRT. In most women, the benefits will outweigh the risk. Why? Because number one, we always know it will help your bones. Always, right? Estrogen is always going to help your bones. Number two, it will also cause a decrease in cardiovascular risk, right? And that decrease in cardiovascular risk is very important because the number one killer of women is still cardiovascular disease.
It's incredible.
Right? So those two things.
Would you say, sorry to butt in, that is a direct link statistically across the world due to the lack of estrogen and perhaps women who aren't on HRT?
Yeah, well, I guess the fact that a lot of the cardiovascular stuff happens after you're 50, right?
Yep.
So sure, it feels like it's a no-brainer. So even those two things make me think that even if you're not symptomatic, it's something you should talk to your doctor about. Because long term, you have to think, okay, what is the health of my bones and what is the health of my heart? Now, having said that, if you go on HRT and you do that, but you're still drinking a lot of alcohol or even a moderate amount, because I fully believe that our moderate healthy guidelines in Australia for drinking alcohol is still way too much.
Very socially accepted, isn't it?
It's way too much. It's way too much.
Yeah.
And I feel like
What are those guidelines?
Well, apparently you can have 2 standard drinks
A night.
up to 4 nights a week, and you just have to have 2 alcohol-free nights.
See, I reckon that's, you're a bit of a pisshead if you're doing that.
It's so much alcohol. It's so much alcohol, right?
Absolutely. I believe so too.
Tell me where I can go and buy cocaine at any drugstore across Australia. And yet there is a bottle-o in every single corner, and nobody would think twice if you walk in there and buy a carton of 36 beers.
No, they're not going to go, everything all good?
Tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me that we haven't got something wrong in this country.
Massive issue with drinking. And look, drinking is one of those things that if you don't do it, it's socially unacceptable. They're like, why aren't you drinking?
Totally. People feel a lot better if I've got a glass of Chardonnay in my hand.
And if you're not drinking in front of them, they feel very, very guilty.
Totally.
They don't understand the concept of not drinking. It's like, oh, well, I'd just like to have a good night's sleep and not poison my body.
100%.
The end.
And it's just like this Aussie culture that is just okay.
Yeah.
When really I feel like we have socially accepted a real addiction problem.
Absolutely.
Is a waking habit. So if you're doing HRT but you're still drinking, even the moderate safe Australian guidelines amount, 2, if you're not exercising. And by exercise, I mean you don't have to be super fit. I'm not asking you to do a marathon and, do the new sexy Hydrox.
General 10,000 steps.
Just be active. Do something that you just move your body in a way that you're going to sustain and enjoy, right? Ideally, the guidelines do say that you do 45 minutes 3 times a week of some sort of cardio, and then I try to get my ladies at least twice a week weightlifting.
For bone density.
For bone density, for your strength, for your mind and clarity. And then nutrition, right? It's out of all of that, nutrition would be the most important.
Absolutely.
What you're putting into your mouth day by day, that doesn't mean that you have to become an obsessive, organic-only clean freak. It just means that you're intentionally prioritizing things that are full of fiber, full of protein, as unprocessed as possible while you're living life in between.
Unfortunately, it's the basics that have got so overclouded by a world of confusing fad exercise programs, fad diets, and I think
carnivore is very sexy at the moment.
Oh, carnivore, keto, fasting, and I think it is intermittent fasting, and it's heavily pushed onto the over 40 women's category.
100%.
Massively. You ask most women in their 30s, they wouldn't have even thought about, in their 20s, you didn't even think about doing a ketogenic diet or a fast or a carnivore. But now it seems to be the only way, and it always leads to disaster because you can't stick to it.
Well, I haven't seen anyone yet, I don't know if you have, doing keto for more than 2 years. Yeah. Maybe people jump on and off it over the years, and then each time it works less and less. The other thing about the carnivore diet is that there's no fiber in it. And so then you're increasing your risk for bowel cancer. Once again, you can't stick to it. You have to do something that you can do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right? And I haven't seen anyone yet with doing the carnivore diet for beyond a year or 2. If they're really OCD and committed, maybe 2 years. But I'm yet to see anyone do it beyond that. And so I really am really like, don't start anything that you cannot do for an extended period of time.
There's no point.
There's no point. And what will happen is that you will lose some weight, you will feel, all the things that you feel. But if you can't maintain that, it comes on, and it usually comes on even more. Yeah.
Look, however, and I'll always say this to our clients, the only way that you'll learn to maintain weight is the way that you lose it.
Yeah.
Sure, you can lose weight on any diet, any form of calorie restriction, you're going to lose weight. But if you only know how to lose weight via cutting carbs or doing water fasts, you're going to finish that journey. It's got a very short shelf life, and then you won't know how to keep it off.
Yeah.
Because you'll just immediately revert back to your old habits. And I think it actually causes a lot of damage with a lot of people because it reinforces bad habits or a negative relationship with food. You can't go through life being afraid of bread. You can't do it.
And what happens is people jump on and off diets. And I think that of all, I say this a lot to a lot of my patients who are at healthy weight, you'll find that they don't restrict themselves or they don't stick to a something diet. So they're not ketogenic, they're not carnivore. They actually just learn to eat moderately,
Yeah.
a little bit of everything, prioritizing the non-processed stuff.
Yeah.
And just keeping it simple.
The more simple, the better.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is a lot of the questions are, should I take this supplement? Should I do this niche thing over here? And it's like, if you're not nailing your nutrition, if you're not cutting down or out alcohol, if you're not exercising, and then plus or minus HRT, if that works for you in this menopause period, then don't bother with the expensive supplements that you're getting from this organic, amazing person that costs you up to $400.
It's the last thing you've got to think about.
Don't bother. It will move you 2%, if that.
If
you're
anything,
lucky.
yeah.
If you're lucky, it will move you 2%.
I think that the majority of the population, unfortunately, is under this mindset that unless something seems really fancy, expensive, organic, revolutionary, then it ain't going to work. Because if you just deliver the basics to somebody and say, hey, look, do you know that you can actually eat a sandwich for lunch and, you can still have the occasional glass of alcohol and have successful weight management?
Yeah.
They'll look at you and go, that seems too basic and easy. What's the catch?
Yeah.
There isn't one.
Yeah.
There's no catch.
And and all of this, nothing comes free. Especially you really have to be intentional about your nutrition. You have to be intentional about your exercise. You have to be intentional about, putting your sleep, cutting down alcohol. You have to be intentional.
Got to work.
But what happens is if there's this drug over here that seems like it will make the ride easier, that's very sexy and quick.
Yeah.
Oh, people love a quick fix.
Love a quick fix.
Love a quick fix. But I promise you the quick fixes don't last once you take that thing away.
Absolutely.
That's where the GLP-1s come in, right?
I know. Like GLP-1 is such a controversial topic and people ask me, will GLP-1 help me lose weight? Of course it will.
Yeah.
Of course it will. But
And a lot of your clients on it?
we have had a lot of clients start on our program who have been on GLP-1 who haven't had success. It either makes them feel sick, they lost weight, of course, they stopped doing it because they didn't want to continue to pay for it, whatever the case may be. And again, just like any quick fix, any fad diet, it sends you back to the start because you don't learn anything through your journey. GLP-1, it's just going to basically make you less hungry. Those receptors are a little bit quieter, but it's still not giving you a good relationship with food. It's still not teaching you about a long-term strategy. Yeah, sure. Some people will have success from it. Fantastic. That's great. But I don't know if it's suited for most people. And I think handing out GLP-1, particularly to somebody who just needs to lose 5-10 kilos, that's education. We just need to educate those people.
Yeah.
My opinion is I think all of these sorts of weight loss drugs, GLP-1 or even weight loss surgery should be reserved into a category for people who it's like a life or death situation. It's like, right, you're in big trouble. We do have to act on it. The chances are you've gone too far. We can't reinforce good nutrition or mindset or education for you right now.
Yeah.
Sure, let's keep you alive.
Yeah.
But most people, I don't know if it's doing the world any good. And I could be wrong. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah. See, this is a tricky part. So do I believe in GLP-1s and do I prescribe them? Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
I try to pick my patients carefully who I put on. I agree with you, 5 to 10 kilos, diet, nutrition, changing lifestyle is so much better. And a lot of people will say, no, but I can't lose that end 5 to 10 kilos. But my thought, if you have to use a GLP-1 to do it, then potentially you're going to end up with more problems than you had in the beginning.
For sure.
Here's why. Because 70% of people that go on a GLP-1 will put the weight back on.
70? Wow.
So, because it's artificially suppressing your appetite, right? So you can eat less, you can maintain a large calorie restriction. What you have to remember is that you might be losing muscle, right? Not just fat, muscle. If you're losing your muscle, your metabolism will go down. And so to sustain your weight loss, you have to go on a calorie restriction, which will be very, very hard to maintain without the GLP-1. Come off the GLP-1, the weight comes back on.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it with a GLP-1 and you don't intend to stay on it forever, which most people shouldn't, it can be very hard to maintain. It's not impossible, but it can be very hard. So if there is only a little bit of weight to lose, it usually can be done through a lifestyle change, and it might take a lot longer, but it will be easier to keep off.
Yeah.
Now, if someone has more than that to lose, so we're talking like 20 kilos, 30 kilos plus, and have had a big history of not being able to keep that off, I do use a GLP-1 because it can be a really good appetite reset for people who aren't used, who need that, who need a reset to go, actually your body can live very, very well on a lot less than what you're taking in. So there are some people that do need that appetite reset to reframe what is an actual healthy intake. And then those people, I'm like, you need to prioritize protein. You need to be strength training so that we can maintain all the muscle that you have, so that when we wean you off this GLP-1, that your metabolism is still appropriate, so it's not really hard for you to maintain.
Yeah.
But I try to pick those cohort of people as people that I would much rather than be on a GLP-1 forever and be at a lower weight to decrease their risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, so that they're mobile, so that they're, so that they can actually live life.
Yeah.
And I think a GLP-1, if need be, they stay on it, is better than the alternative.
Yeah, I know, and it's such a grey area, and there's so many ways that you can look at because
so great, and it depends on what that person feels as well.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because I'm also of the opinion, and I tell my patients all the time, you are an educated human, right? You do your research. I will explain to you the risks, and then at the end of the day, it really is up to you.
And I think that's what more GPs should be doing, because from the information that I've gathered from clients, for a lot of people, it just seems to be a script. It's handed out, and there's no actual talk about nutrition. There's no talk about the loss of muscle. Nobody's saying, look, you really should be combining this with a good nutrition plan and strength training. It's just a script that's getting handed out. And I think that without education can be a very, very dangerous place for people.
100%. So I say as well, so if you do choose, so say, for example, I think it's a no-brainer if there's obesity, there's diabetes, there's cardiovascular disease, all of that involved, that's a whole nother ball game. And to be honest, that's probably not who we're talking about in the majority of people. If you've got a 5, 10, 15 kilo to lose and you decided to use a GLP-1, I would say number one, you need to be making sure that you keep your muscle mass. So getting a body scan to make sure that your muscle mass is staying and the fat is decreasing is very important. And you do that through adequate protein, eating your protein first, and adequate and weight training. And then number two, go on the lowest dose that you can to lose about 0.5 kilo a week, whatever that is, so that you do it slowly and you only use it as a tool. So you still have an appetite, it's just less.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is that you're still going to be learning how to eat well, how to exercise well, how to sustain a lifestyle, so that you'll be able to keep that weight off when you come off the GLP-1.
Yeah.
So don't be aiming to increasing it every 4 weeks like the drug companies want you to. What you want to do is go on the lowest dose you can possibly go on to sustain a slow weight loss, so that you still have an appetite, it's just controlled, and then that way you can implement some tools.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
for sure. Christine, one last question that I want to ask you, because you may need to go soon and give birth. We're playing with fire here, I feel. I hear a lot of women say, and my Facebook feed, I've got 800,000 people on there, and I can put up some, a piece of content about perimenopause or menopause. Does it get easier after perimenopause, or is menopause tougher?
No, I think it's the opposite. So usually perimenopause is the hardest.
Okay.
Because it's so variable.
Right.
Meaning that your moods are all over the place. You feel out of control of your body. You don't have any libido. You're you're in that phase of life where you're often in your 40s. Your kids are getting older. You're really busy. You're often working full time. There's so many things to handle. And it's tumultuous because you're 1 minute you're crying, the next minute you're happy, the next minute you want to kill someone. And that's the perimenopause storm. Once you go through menopause, your estrogen goes down, and you're just a little, and if you're on hormone replacement therapy, it's a lot more stable.
Okay.
It's a lot more stable because the only estrogen you're getting is from the hormones that you're getting if you're on HRT. You're not going through a chaotic storm, and you usually feel better. Yeah.
I like that. You got to be cautious usually.
Usually. So that's the thing. I think, was it Louise Newson says it a fair bit. She's like, my waiting room is full of women in their 40s, late 40s, maybe early 50s. There's not a huge amount of 67-year-olds, right? Because that storm doesn't last forever.
Fantastic news for women, for men around the world.
100%.
Because it is a storm. It is one of those things, and I know this when I speak to somebody who's a little bit younger or their partner's not going through perimenopause. I can talk about, what my wife goes through. I can discuss this with them and say, look, this is potentially going to happen with you, your partner, blah, blah, blah. The eyes kind of glaze over because it's like, that ain't happening to me. That's not a real thing. It's just like, no, please understand, prepare for it.
100%.
Understand what's going to happen, because when it does happen, it's not going to be such a shock.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as mothers, we have a responsibility to teach our daughters.
For sure.
Because that's something that I know my mum didn't talk about with me, and there's no slight on my mum. She also didn't know about it, right? And so now, my daughter's only 2, but I really want to bring her up being so aware of hormones, so aware of her body, so aware of the destruction that can happen if it's not handled well.
Absolutely.
And I think if you can prepare for that in your 30s, don't get paranoid about it, but be aware, then you are miles ahead of all of our mums, all the boomers who really missed out.
Absolutely. Well, Christine, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us again.
Pleasure.
I really do appreciate your time, and we appreciate everything that you're educating us with. You're doing a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
And all the best with Bub.
Thank you.
Number 3.
Number 3.
Good luck.
Closing shop after this. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.